Psychology Solutions here for another SPS Mental Toughness Zoom class with Coach Orlando Watkins, who's done an excellent job in making sure that SPS is getting this message out far and wide, not just here in Michigan, not just here throughout the United States, but in Canada as well. We appreciate that. We have Malachi Irvin, who's on with us as well. He's traveling in the car, but he's always giving some great insight. He's a freshman on his way to Birmingham Brother Rice, I believe. A really bright young man, and his comments are always appreciated. But tonight, I want to formally welcome in our new young leader, Mr. Terry T.J. McCord Jr., great young man I've had the pleasure of knowing for several years in capacities both on the basketball court and in the community. Really great heart and excited about taking on this role. So, Terry, with no further ado, I'm going to just give the floor to you to let you kind of open up things, and we're going to talk a little bit about the things that are going on in our world, particularly the boycotts, the protests, and how that impacts everyone, especially since we have athletes, particularly NBA athletes, at the center of all that's going on. So with no further ado, Terry, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm blessed to be in this situation. I was really blessed to have you offer me this position. I knew I had to take it, had to know how to make time for it. This is big. I think this just gives me a chance, to let people know, give people more of awareness of what's going on, touch on mental health, which is something that doesn't get touched on as much. So I'm just blessed to be here, and the different topics what we're talking about each week, it's just really something that I think should be touched on and reached out like we're doing today. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, let's get right to it. Let me ask you, one, if you know, the backdrop of this discussion is, unfortunately, several days ago, there was a shooting of an unarmed man, Jacob Blake, if I'm saying his name correctly, out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, the brother is paralyzed, and we don't have to go into that. But even along with that, the fallout of the shooting was a protest that took place where there was another murder. In this case, this was a 17-year-old who traveled from Illinois to Wisconsin with an unlicensed AR-15 long rifle that does death and destruction no matter what you do. One shot, one kill, no doubt. And now he's in custody, and he had to turn himself in because the police wouldn't even take him, because after he shot somebody in broad daylight, or in plain sight, I should say, he was able to walk past the police, go home, sleep in his bed, and be here. So, of course, you've had the NBA, you've had LeBron James, player saying he was ready to, shut the whole season down, and I think that's not going to happen. But also you had on TNT set Kenny the Jet Smith, along with Johnson, Charles Barkley, and Shaquille O'Neal. Kenny said he couldn't be there, and he walked off. So for me, Terry, Kenny walking off probably was the most impactful of all, because you almost kind of expect that the players were going to do something. But Kenny kind of threw cold water in people's face, because it really put Shaquille and Charles in a very unique position, because he kind of left them there looking kind of stupid as other black men. But anyway, with all that being said, what role do you think mental toughness plays in being an athlete in today's society, whether you're high school, collegiate, or as we're seeing right now, a professional athlete that's going between trying to play for an NBA championship and also being involved with social justice?
Oh, man, I think it just shows how tough it is to be an athlete nowadays, like today. I was really proud of the NBA players for stepping up and doing what they felt was right. And it's good to see those who make money off of entertainment also realize that there are bigger problems than than the NBA finals or competing for a finals, So I really think it was really cool to hear people like LeBron saying, man, half my mind is locked in on the playoffs and the other is locked in on, social justice. And then it's just really cool to see that. And one thing that really stuck out to me is you hear athletes talk about, I'm not just an athlete, I'm an African-American athlete. So just realizing that they are African-American while seeing other African-Americans being a victim of social injustice, it's really cool for them to realize, hey, look, I am an African-American in the United States. And for me to take a stand and also realize that these are struggles that we are going through today, it's bigger than basketball. And so for them taking that stand, sports is kind of a platform where people can really see it and it gets a lot of people's attention because the sports brings people together. So I think them for making that stand and for Kenny doing it, because that was all we could watch, the talk show, them speaking, and for him to even be like, I feel like I shouldn't even be here right now. I should join them. And it just really caught people's attention. It really caused people to like, look, like it's bigger than sports. You got people like LeBron talking about, man, forget that. Like we need to be focused on change right now. Forget closing the series against the Blazers. We need to worry about how can we make this world better for those that look like me and come from my areas. So it's really just so big to see people with that platform use that platform and speak up. Because it's, man, I see like a young person like me. I mean, it just shows that, there are people out there fighting for the things that are right.
Yeah, you made some excellent points right there. And you're absolutely right, kind of touching on Kenny again. I remember when my grandmother, Blanche Huddleston, my dad's mom, passed away. I was here in Lansing, being a native Detroiter. And I remember going to work after I got the news, and we were close. And I remember being at work, Terry, and kind of saying, why am I here? Because sometimes what happens is when you have a traumatic event, you kind of go through the motions. And I said, well, I need to go home. I need to leave. And I say that because I look at what happened with Kenny, and it seemed like he had that same kind of experience. He was saying, I am impacted by this. He talked about the feelings he was having in the car ride on the way over. So throughout that entire process, he wasn't himself. Now, the reason I bring it up, you as a recent high school athlete, me as an athlete years ago, it's tough, man, when imagine being in the NBA right now and all these things are happening, but your team is not about Black Lives Matter. The NBA is not about supporting your call to action. Just imagine if you're like that one of those few African Americans in the National Hockey League who have come out and said it's horrible that I'm playing in the league and I'm an African American, and they don't want to recognize the plight of other African Americans and cancel a game, postpone a game. And it's funny, and I was just saying this on Jack Ebling's Jack Ebling's Drive with Jack about an hour ago. It's amazing how the NHL, Terry, talked about how they wanted to do more to bring diversity to the NHL. They had these initiatives that they were working on with people that I know. Actually, one young man, Marlo Stoudemire out of Detroit, who passed away via COVID-19. May he rest in peace. But he was actually working with the NHL to bring about more diversity. But here you have something that's pretty straightforward to say, hey, out of solidarity for African Americans or for this cause of Black Lives Matter, let's postpone games. But because the vast majority of that fan base, the vast majority of the players, the vast majority of the influencers in hockey are not African American, so because they're not, they don't have a voice. What do you think about that?
I mean, I like on Twitter, you see a lot of people talking, about, oh, I'm not paying no more season tickets for them, and I feel like that person doesn't really necessarily, affect the team. But one thing that I see, is the owners of the NBA, you don't really see too many of them speaking out like, oh, just play or go ahead and play, like how the NFL owners were doing that about Kaepernick kneeling and them doing stuff like for social justice as well. You don't really see the NBA owners doing that. So I think it's really cool for them to have their back. But also I think it makes those viewers uncomfortable, makes them realize like these are things that the people you watch on TV, like your athletes and like Donovan Mitchell who's been speaking out, and LeBron and Trae Young and all these people who they pay money to see to entertain them, it gives them a chance to have a voice like, look, these are the things that I have to deal with as an African American, as a minority in this country. And it kind of puts their fans in a place to where, look, let me get to know this player. Let me understand his experience. Let me get to know how society portrays him as a threat, not just a ball player. And I think a lot of times people get that mixed up to where like, oh, how are these millionaires speaking out on this stuff and they're making millions and all that. But it's just it's like makes you think that they understand not everyone can be a ball player. Not everyone can be a rapper or different things to feel not as like prejudiced towards, and, people are paying money to see them and putting them at a high platform. So it's just really cool to see people who realize that, like, look, I got some people in my neighborhood that don't have the same opportunities as they should, or they're not looked upon as young, gifted, Americans that can do things for this world. So I think it's really cool to see those people kind of give the viewers, that experience of like, look, this is the things that we go through. We're not just here to play ball and make y'all money. This is our experience. We're people too. We're not just entertainers.
Yeah. Oh, you said some great things. The one word I want to go back to, you talked about how for some viewers, it may be uncomfortable for them having
Right.
to listen to, hear about those things. And what I'll say to that, man, and for those viewers who are out there like that, in America, we're going to have some shared discomfort. Because if I have to be uncomfortable about what's happening, unarmed black man being shot, shot down in the street, if you will, killed, choked to death, whatever it may be, and then you have young white males who are breaking the law, who can't even get arrested, then that's what you're going to have to live with. I think what we get caught up in is that we want to get to this point that nobody is going to feel the pain of someone else. But how can you sit and say you have an issue with the destruction of property, but you don't also say you have an issue with an unarmed black man being shot 7 times in the back? The reality is that we're living in a race-based society, man. And I think the biggest lie people are told to believe is that there isn't racism in America. Right now, the Republican National Convention is taking place, and that's one of their main talking points to debunk the idea of racism. But we're not going to go for that because despite what you say, I see the evidence of what you do. And when you talk about there can't be any other more of a plain representation of racism in America is that you have this shooting of an unarmed man shot 7 times in the back for disobeying an officer and walking away when you have 2 or 3 other officers. Then you have someone with an assault rifle that we're able to see the damage that it does. You have other witnesses saying, this guy just shot somebody, take him. And there's no response to that. But more importantly, Terry, and I think this is where sports has the opportunity to have the most influence, it's not about what we see and what we hear, it's what we're not hearing. It's the silence. It's the white silence. It's how everyone was all about Black Lives Matter. Everyone was hashtagging, but I don't see nobody doing that now. It's kind of like the world went to sleep. And with the exception of a few people who are in the industry, no one's talking about it. So I can only imagine what it would be like as an athlete. And I think what's happening right now is you're going to get a lot of interesting things happens that if sports are able to go forward in this country, particularly prep sports, not necessarily in Michigan, but like in states like Florida and whatnot that are on track for that, these conservative coaches who in the past may not have supported their players, wanting to boycott, wanting to kneel, and want to do all those things, now when the NBA takes the lead and that becomes a norm, when the NFL and Roger Goodell say things like, we got it wrong with Colin Kaepernick, I don't know what's going to happen with some of these conservative good old boy type coaches who want to say don't kneel, don't protest. They're going to be at odds. What do you think about that, Terry?
I think so too, and I think a lot of those people don't fail to take responsibility for what's going on. And I like one thing that I talk to my friends. I have friends that are Caucasian, and a lot of times they feel bad, but I know a lot of times that they take responsibility. I had a friend of mine. I don't know if you know Henrik Jones. He's really big on he's big on like just feeling the need to just take responsibility. And I feel like a lot of times people feel uncomfortable, like these owners and coaches, like they don't want to feel uncomfortable and take responsibility for things that may, like like Jim Crow and all these things were a long time ago, but there's still some things today that were built because that was broken, or because like war on drugs or different things that were brought about to destroy the Black community. It's just more things that they benefit from. And a lot of times people don't want to take responsibility, like, yeah, I have white privilege, and that's something me and him talk about. And he's like, yeah, I do, but I feel bad because, it shouldn't be this way. And I think a lot of times people fail to really realize that, because it's kind of almost selfish, It's like you fail to feel empathetic for other people and have sympathy for other people, you know what I'm saying? They're always worried about themselves. And I feel like I heard the definition of privilege is like, you don't care about something until it's affected to you, until it happens to you. I think a lot of times that's the way it is. People don't realize how important stuff is until they're affected by it. And, they fail to take responsibility.
No, you're right. People don't realize how important something until they're impacted by it. And in this particular case, when you have a shooting in Kenosha and you have people that come from another state to quote unquote protect property, yeah, they're not feeling
Man,
that. And I think this also speaks to the power of sports. You talk about Henrik. Henrik is a nice young man. I really like that young man. I've always liked him in my experience with him. But it was the power of sports, along with his family, the Tom Crawfords of the world, who we know from Press Pass, his son, Cody Crawford, who seem to be allies in the fight when it comes down to talking about the importance of people coming together. But I think the reality is this, and you said it, Terry, until it touches home for someone, until it impacts them, and what's happening now is society is allowing so many buffers between the individuals like you and I who may be receiving these negative interactions with the police and whatnot, and people on the other end. There's so much space and so many buffers in between that they say, I don't have to care about that. But when your NBA game is canceled, when your NFL team is speaking on it, when sponsors or companies that you work for are taking action, then you're
right.
forced to kind of have to figure out a way. And I think, here's a question I have for you. Do you think if the NBA players weren't in the bubble and these things were happening, that they can have an influence as it relates to social justice right now?
I think honestly, I think because they're put off into their own like their bubble, I think them boycotting was a way for them to protest. Because I remember I seen like Twitter is like a big thing for all like the athletes. That's where they speak their mind. So I've been really keeping track of that. And I seen a tweet from Jaylen Brown. He's like, man, I want to protest, and they're in their bubble and they can't, you know. And so I think I feel like that boycott was their way of like, look, man, this is not cool. Like as African Americans and their teammates with them that may not be African Americans are together with them in doing that. So I feel like that's the way of protesting. I feel like the impact would still be there if they weren't. I feel like it'd be a different kind of format in a way, because you probably could protest, go up there, because there is games in between each playoff. And so with LeBron being half locked in and on one thing and another, I feel like they still would find a way to speak up, protest, go out and about, because they're able to go out. With the bubble, they're not really allowed to go anywhere other than the different venues in the bubble. So I really feel like that boycotting was their way today. But I feel like if they weren't in the bubble, I feel like they, like Jaylen Brown and Donovan Mitchell going out walking, Lillard and all of them, I feel like they'd still find the time to make their voices heard and join their communities.
Yeah, because you have seen these guys be proactive when it comes to that. I just know that them being there in the bubble, and I thought it was best that they stayed and not
Right.
the season. And it's tough, and I'll tell you why. Because it's so easy to be labeled a sellout, but you're going to be
Right.
criticized no matter what. But right now in the bubble, they have access to the media. They are really in a position to control the narrative, and I think that with what the NBA has already done with making Black Lives the brand of the NBA, Black Lives Matter, the brand of the NBA, that these guys can use this time to play the best basketball they've ever played, but also
Right.
be able to leverage their voices. Because you're old enough to know. You remember back when Donald Sterling made those comments,
Yep.
he was banned for life. At that time, man, NBA players weren't this proactive. But then you look at someone like a Chris Paul, who was right in the middle of that, and whether they're going to look back in history and regret that they did not boycott because it was so unheard of. But now we've kind of evolved to the point where these guys are really leading the way. These guys are really using their multi-million-dollar platform. They're using their contacts and their connects that never happened before. And I think so many people, Terry, think that these young people, these young athletes are going to just be ball players and that's it. But they're in that bubble. They're putting some plans together, and I think some major change is going to happen because of that.
Oh yeah, and just one thing, I feel like a lot of it is like the youth. You see younger players coming out speaking out. Like I mentioned, like Young and Mitchell and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and all these people that are not afraid to speak up. And a lot of it, does have to come with Gen Z and other like younger people that are not afraid to speak out. Not to mention LeBron, like him. It's all about like the leadership of the NBA. I feel like that's a big key. And Chris Paul being the NBA Players Association president, I think it's all about the leadership, and you got guys like them not afraid to speak out. It almost makes it easier for you to be an ally or you to be, to follow through with that as a player. Because, I mean, I'm thinking of it as a perspective as a white American that's in the NBA. They still want to play for a championship. But for them to not even want to challenge that and still feel like they're an ally and want to join their teammates who they go to battle with every game, I feel like that's really cool of them and really, shows that they're taking that responsibility. Like, my teammates are feeling bad about what's going on and they're hurt. And for me to be that teammate and to still take responsibility as a white American for, minorities out here that aren't doing so well with the social injustice, economic injustice, all these different things, you could just see the leadership of the NBA and their teams really taking a stand. And I feel like, it makes it a lot easier for those players to just get behind the leader and go.
Wow, very well put. Let me ask you this, Terry. What would it be like? How challenging would it be right now if all sports, I presume, you were a football player. Right now, you would be, getting ready, for your football season to start. What do you think it would be like if you were an athlete on a high school team and you were conflicted with wanting to protest, wanting to walk away, but the team wasn't all on the same page? What would it be like, or what advice can you give to someone who may come into this scenario really soon based on where they live at, what's going on in their community and what they want to do? What advice would you give an athlete on that?
Man, I know that's tough. I know, people may be playing for scholarships, different opportunities, and it can be hard. But I think that's what, people get a lot of criticism, for still playing because of that. I feel like you can, as long as you make a way to make your impact felt, and whether it's not playing, if that's something that you feel like, you should be doing, I go ahead. That's something like, that's you know what I'm saying? And I feel like if your team, half your team doesn't, half your team does, just make sure as a person, you feel like you're doing what you need to do to make that impact. If it's not planned for you, like I said, don't play, whether it's wearing something on your shirt or wearing something, bringing awareness, you know what I'm saying? It's all about raising awareness. And I feel like a lot of times if you hear star players like, oh, I'm not playing today. Oh, LeBron didn't play. Oh, Chris Paul didn't play. Oh, man, what are they talking about, And then if it's like a guy that's like not as, not that doesn't have that much popularity, they wear something on their shirt or something on their sleeve, and it still attracts attention. You know what I mean? So I think it's whatever you can do to raise that awareness and make your impact. I think that's really the most important thing. Like with the name on the back, say her name, Black Lives Matter, how many more, you know what I'm saying? I think it's just really cool to see that a way for them to catch people's attention, raise that awareness, because that's really all that we want to do as a movement, in this movement, is to raise awareness, make this change. And I think the more and more we put pressure on it, it's going to have to burst, it's going to have to change at some point. Just to make sure we keep applying the pressure. So as a high school athlete and you're feeling some way, you know what I'm saying, you got to think about what's bigger to you. Is it, social injustice change, or is it playing that sport? And if you need to play that sport to get what you want, find a way to make that impact, whether it's speaking out on your Twitter, speaking out on this, you know what I'm saying, be a part of local community groups that are speaking out on this, make your own group, you know what I'm saying, make your own group, build followers in your communities, your neighborhoods, do whatever you can to make that awareness known and to bring awareness and bring people together.
Very good. I think it's also worth noting before we try to wrap things up, because we had a lot of great conversations. It's also worth noting that, the mental health issue that comes when you experience this trauma, whether you're watching it on television, whether you're hearing about it on the news, on social media, that it's very important that individuals keep their mental health in the best positive light possible. One could say, well, how could you seeing someone being shot impact you? You didn't know that person. You weren't shot. But there's a trauma and there's a trigger that comes with seeing these things over and over and over again. I think it's very important that whether it's Terry, whether it's myself, whether it's Coach Orlando Watkins, whoever it may be, that we try to process this thing and think through it in a way that no matter what happens, what takes place after this, that we have positive mental health. Because these are the things that allow people to spiral out of control, Terry, to be in a negative state of mind. And it's hard because you're looking at something that's taking place on TV, but you have to turn around and go into a work environment where people may have a difference of views. You have to maybe even be around family members or extended family members that have some difference of views. And most importantly, you can't let social media get the best of you, because you get to clicking on these social media links and seeing things that are disagreeable to what you believe. And as much as it may seem like the craziest thing you've ever said or the most, racist thing you've ever read, You have to
Right.
make sure that you have positive mental health and not internalize these things, so that you can not become a casualty, even though you weren't the one who got shot. So with that, Terry, why don't you give us some closing thoughts on what we had? I like to always, especially when I have a robust conversation, try to keep it, as tight as possible, because I want people to
Oh
go
yeah.
listen to it. I want people to go and dissect it. I want people to hear all the things that you've shared and we've shared, but more importantly, for anyone who's watching this as an athlete or influencer of an athlete, here's something that can really help our athletes get through this tough time that all are related to, because your favorite player is protesting. So if your favorite player is
Right.
hurting, that's going to have an impact on you. So what are some final remarks you may have for us? You've done a great job today, by the way, too.
Oh, I think first, you mentioned favorite player. I mean, first, if this has impacted you in a way, take it out positively. Find ways you can, like I said in the last question, find something that you can do. A big question I like to ask myself is, what can I do? What can I do to raise awareness? What can I do to bring these uncomfortable conversations up to the surface? What I like to say, what can I do? I think that's a big question anyone should ask themselves. And I just want to leave this, with people listening. What can I do? I think that's a big question. It's like that small little phrase can lead to so many different outlets of different solutions. If it can start off by one person saying, you know what, I take responsibility, we need to change. Just think about if that one person realizes that, and you get so many hundreds, thousands, hundred thousands of people saying, oh, what can I do? I want to take responsibility for this. I'm tired of seeing people hurt and, and feeling some type of way about this. What can I do? And I think if more people ask that, even if you are a high school athlete, you can impact people. That's one thing, being an athlete, we have influence, so using that and being like, what can I do as a high school athlete to raise awareness? What can I do as a professional athlete, let alone, a collegiate athlete? What can I do to make this world better for those that look like me and those that look like, like him or my brother or my sister and all these different people? What can I do? And I think if we start asking those questions and bringing up solutions, I think, we're going the right way. But it all starts with them taking responsibility and saying, what can I do?
I like that, Terry. What can I do? We got Terry T.J. McCord here on his first evening with the SPS Monday. Excuse me. This is our mental toughness Zoom class. I got too many things going on. You've done a great job in what you share, and I hope that anyone watching this can be inspired, continue to keep up the good fight. So with that, I want us to wrap up. I want to thank Coach Orlando Watkins for always keeping us connected and getting this message out far and wide. Terry, I want to thank you. You've done a great job. We're going to make sure we get this up and get it circulated so we can make sure when the
Yes,
question
sir.
asks, what can I do? We have found something significant to do. And I thank you for being a part of that with me and SPS tonight.
Yes, sir. Always. I'm glad I can, pass this message. It's definitely something that needs to be touched on. And I hope listeners, ask that question, what can I do? And I think it's going to resurface some conversations that need to be talked about and some solutions.
There we go. You guys heard it here. So with that, SPS is out. We'll catch you next time and ask the question, what can you do? And have a good answer to that question. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Okay.